Well, how often have you heard it's time for your car to get a tune-up? But our auto man, Brian Bowersock of West Escondido Auto, says cars don't necessarily need tune-ups anymore. Good morning, Brian.
Good morning.
Thanks so much for being here, as always. All right, so what exactly is a tune-up?
A tune-up was a term used by your father or grandfather back in the days when we had, most cars had distributors, points condenser, spark plug wires, cap and rotor, things like that that were replaced on regular intervals or adjusted, such as points condenser, set the timing, things like that. Most cars these days don't even have distributors anymore. So all that stuff is gone, the cap, rotor, the wires. We've pretty much gone to what we call a primary ignition system, where either we have a coil pack that you may have spark plug wires that goes out to each spark plug, or most cars now what we call coil over, which there's a coil on top of every single spark plug.
So in layman's terms, that means tune-up is an old term, not really accurate anymore.
Correct. Folks ask about tune-ups because it's a term's been around a long time for people. It really doesn't exist anymore on a vehicle. We now service vehicles at time and mileage when they know components wear. Spark plugs last a lot longer now. We have platinum and iridium spark plugs. Manufacturers recommend some manufacturers 60, but most have gone to about 100,000 miles to replace them.
And you brought in some examples. This is an older spark plug, right?
Well, this is actually a distributor cap and spark plug wires, which would be on an older type vehicle that we are going away from. Okay. So these components, most cars do not have them anymore.
Instead, it looks like this.
This
right?
is actually what we call a coil over. This actually sits on top. There's one on top of every spark plug, and the computer controls firing the spark plug. So in sense, there's no way to change the ignition timing either on the vehicle now.
Okay, so let's talk bottom line for what people need to know. So instead of getting that tune-up, they're going to get their car serviced. You say for that about 100,000 miles.
About 100,000 when it comes to spark plugs, most cars. Usually you should ask your service provider. They should be able to look up when it's recommended for your vehicle and follow those manufacturer recommendations.
What are other good numbers to know mileage totals where people should be looking for other things on their cars?
We already know oil changes roughly around 3,000 miles, or if you use synthetic, you can get a longer, up around 6,000 miles. Air filters depends on the driver. If you drive in an environment that's extremely dusty, then you're going to need to replace the air filter more often. Whoever's servicing your vehicle should be checking that on a regular basis for you. Fuel filters, usually roughly around 30,000 miles. You should replace a fuel filter. Keeps contaminants out of the injection system.
So all good things to know, but the key thing is everybody's car's different, right? So ask your individual service provider.
Go by the manufacturer's recommendations is the best way to do it. Yeah, ask your service provider.
And keep a little note, or like Jiffy Lube does, put the little thing up there so that you know exactly how long you have to go. But of course, you can always go to West Escondido Auto and ask Brian yourself what's right for your car. Brian,
Absolutely.
Thanks so much for being here. We appreciate it. Now, if you have a question for Brian, like we mentioned, you can also drop him an email. The link to his website, it's on our website. Just go to san diego6.com, click on Hot Topics. He also has his own section on the website.